The optic is one of the more important components when it comes to precision rifle shooting. It has the tough job of having to consistently dial the elevation that we ask it to and then return back to zero every single time I do that. And we do that a lot as long-range shooters. So I want a good quality optic. But there's also some other features I want to consider as a long-range shooter, and I want to make sure that I select the right equipment. So one thing that we look for out of our optic as precision rifle shooters is we want it to have exposed turrets. So exposed elevation turret at a minimum, and then it would also be nice if it had an exposed windage turret as well. So as long-range shooters, we're constantly reaching up here, dialing elevation out to distance, engaging targets, switching distances, doing the same thing. And if there's a cap on that turret, chances are it probably wasn't designed for what we're trying to do here, and it's going to hinder our ability to do that. So we want exposed turrets so that that's one less step I have to deal with in order to engage those targets out to distance. Along with exposed turrets, I also want to make sure I have parallax adjustment. So parallax is the apparent movement of the reticle across the target when the position of the head is slightly moved. So if I have my head back here mounted on the rifle and I move it slightly through my optic, the way that's going to be perceived if I have parallax error is the reticle is going to move slightly back and forth on the target. What I see is parallax error, and I have a parallax adjustment knob on my scope to minimize that. So what I'm doing is putting the reticle on the same plane as the target so that I don't have that movement and I'm much better aligned to hit that target. So parallax adjustment is really important because that's going to change for a 200-yard target and then a 600-yard target and then a 1,000-yard target. I'm going to have to adjust that parallax to make sure I'm putting that reticle on the same plane for those different target distances. So that is nice to have as a long-range shooter. Also, locking turrets are important, as I like to dial out to elevation, dial out, and then return back to zero. And then when I return back to zero, lock that turret down, put my gun in my gun bag, go home, maybe it's in my vehicle, there's some moving around happening, and I don't want to pull my gun out and see that it's on a different number other than my zero and not know where I'm at in my turrets. So being able to lock those turrets down for good consistency, and I know this isn't going to move, it's going to stay on zero until I unlock that turret and manipulate it, is a good feeling to have. So locking turrets are important. Also, on top of that, we're dialing out to distance and engaging targets. Dialing out to distance, sometimes we go out pretty far. We might make a couple of revolutions as we're pushing out further and further, and we're concerned about other things as we're shooting out to distance. Wind, making sure I have my processes correct, and I'm paying attention to what I need to pay attention to, and maybe I don't understand how many revolutions I made in my turret. So having a zero stop, all I need to do is dial down. The turret will stop, and then I find zero, and that is where this gun and optic are zeroed, in my case, at 100 yards. So I don't have to really think about how many revolutions I'm making with my turret. I simply dial down, find zero, and that is where this gun is zeroed at. So having a zero stop for us as long-range shooters is a really important quality to have in our optic. Along with that, we want to consider the reticle that's actually in the optic itself. So having a technical style reticle, so something with those hash marks and those numbers, we refer to those as subtensions. So having a lot of those reference points in our reticle is important because we can use those to hold for elevation and engage targets, or hold for wind and engage targets, and I have more refined aiming points. If I have something like a duplex reticle, I only have one aiming point. So that forces me to have to dial for elevation and hold center on everything because I have no information to make holds in my reticle itself. So I have to dial for windage and elevation in that case. And then finally consider, do I have a first focal plane or a second focal plane style scope? With first focal plane style scopes, no matter where I'm at in my magnification range, those subtensions or those measurements in my optic, in my reticle, they stay true no matter if I'm on 6 power or 36 power. If I can see 1 mil, that is 1 mil, and I can hold that and it will be true. In second focal plane scopes, that is not the case. In second focal plane, you need to refer to your manufacturer specified setting and ensure that you go to that magnification, and then those subtensions are true and then you can use holds to engage the target, or you can measure targets to find the range to it, or whatever you need to do from there. So keep that in mind. If you do have a second focal plane scope, you need to understand what magnification you need to be on. First focal plane scopes tend to be more popular among competition shooters or military snipers. They want to be fast on target and make holds. They don't want to have to worry about being on a certain magnification. They just want to see it and send it, and they're faster on target. So just keep that in mind. Above all, we need good quality here. Figure out what your application is. Think about what features would work best for you. These are the features that are ideal from a long-range shooter perspective. Understand that not all optics are created equal. Some of them do not have these features that we're looking for, but you have to understand what you're trying to do with your setup and make the appropriate decisions.